Hello, I'm Kevin Hayes, the Story Man. Let me tell you a story about sugar pudding. Once upon a time, there was a little pig born. Tiny little thing, runt of the litter. It's only about yay long, about that tall. Never got really any bigger than that way anyway, but he got a lot rounder because he loved to eat. Anything sweet, he loved to eat. His name was Carl, but that's not what they called him around the barnyard. They'd always make fun of him. Oh, it's Cannonball Carl, because he looked like a cannonball with, his little stubby legs and little stubby snout. And his tail even looked like a little fuse on a cannonball. Well, Carl didn't appreciate that at all. He says, listen, you're going to be mighty sorry one day because I'm going to be a famous pig. You're going to be sorry that you treated me this way. They went, nah, Cannonball Carl's going to be famous. When pigs fly. That's what they used to say. Carl will be famous when pigs fly. Cannonball Carl, Cannonball Carl. Well, Cannonball Carl, or Carl, I should say, to be respectful, didn't like that much at all. So he went to his mom, and his mama said, well, Carl, what are you going to do? Carl says, Mama, I think I got to go seek my fortunes elsewhere. And she says, I think that'd be a good idea. Let me pack you some snacks in a backpack. And she did, and put it on his back. Away he went. A couple hours later, Carl was getting pretty hungry. And he was trying to figure out how to be famous as fast as he could. And he got to thinking, how could a pig be famous? What if he could fly? So he started asking everybody he came across, how can a pig like me learn to fly? Well, he came across a bird, and the bird said, well, you could flap your wings, but you don't have any. Well, that didn't help Carl any. So he walked a little further, and he came across a squirrel. The squirrel said, well, I flew once. I jumped off a tree limb, missed the other tree limb, and I flew for a good while. Kind of painful when it landed, though. But you got some bounce to you, so you probably be okay. Carl said, "Well, thank you, but that sounds more like falling than flying to me." No thanks. So he went on. Pretty soon, he came across a big hawk sitting in a tree. Hawk said, I'll help you fly, and I'll do it right now without no lessons necessary. And he swooped down and he went to grab Carl, but his talons got kind of tangled up in his backpack there, and he started to lift him off the ground, but Carl didn't want no flight lessons like that at all, so he just straightened out his little legs and fell out of the backpack and took off running. So, saved himself, still wasn't famous, still didn't know how to fly, and he was feeling mighty down. Well, he got to a little town, and he walked in front of a cafe, and it must have been destiny, I'll tell you, because the name of the cafe was on a big billboard out front. Big picture of a pig. Above it, it said, the Cannonball Cafe. Carl said, it's got to be written in the stars. On top of that, there was a sign outside that said, help wanted. Clear on the top above the door said, daily special at noon. Free pudding when pigs fly. Carl knew this was the place. So he ran up, took his little hoof, and he grabbed the help wanted sign, and he waited for somebody to open the door because he didn't have any hands, so he had to wait for somebody to open the door to get in the cafe. And he got in there, and he ran up to this older couple that must have been the owners, and just started screaming and crying and trying to convince them that he needed to be hired because there was something that he could do for the Cannonball Cafe. His name, after all, was Cannonball Carl. Well, the couple didn't know what he was saying. He didn't speak human. They didn't speak pig. All they heard was wee, 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 wee. So they saw that he had the help wanted sign. They could tell he wanted a job. They could tell he was hungry. They were a good couple. They wanted to do something for him, but didn't know what. And finally, the guy said, Ma, I think I know what to do with this pig. And she says, you do? She says, I do. You know that sign out there that said free pudding when pigs fly? We've had up there forever. She says, I do. She said, well, I'm going to have pigs fly, and people are going to come in. They're going to buy an entree. And if they buy an entree at noon, they get free pudding when pigs fly. And he says, I don't understand. He says, you're about to. So we got in the truck, took off uptown, came back a little while later with a length of sewer pipe, about that big around, 4 or 5 feet long. Put some wagon wheels on it. He had it out there in front of the cafe. He came in. He said, what do you think of that, Ma? She says, what do I think about what? And he said, we're going to have dinner and a show. So a little town, everybody started to see all the commotion down there, and they came by, and they said, what's up? And he says, at noon today, get all your friends, come by. We're going to have free pudding when pigs fly, with the purchase of an entree, of course. So here comes the whole town at noon. And before they go in, he has them get in a big semicircle around the little parking lot there. And he says, you know, that poster that's been up there forever, free pudding when pigs fly? And they all say, yeah. But you ain't never going to give us no free pudding. He said, today you're going to get free pudding. And they all said, when pigs fly. And he said, exactly. And he trotted out little Carl there. And he had a little helmet on. And he had just poured a whole bunch of gunpowder down the barrel of that cannon. He shoved Carl in there with his little helmet. And we got down to the end, clear to the bottom of it. His little tail stuck out of that hole. And Ma, you know, being concerned about Carl, had put some gauze around there so he wouldn't get his tail burnt. They just did it for looks, really, with the burning of the tail. But he lit the thing. Blam! Carl flew out of the cannon. And Carl got a little concerned because he never asked how he was going to land. But luckily, Ma had a kind heart, and she'd put a little baby pool full of chocolate pudding down there across the parking lot. And here comes Carl. Plop, right in that chocolate pudding. Whole crowd, yay, Carl, Cannonball Carl. Well, Cannonball looked up, realized that he had indeed flown, at least for a little while, and he was feeling pretty good about himself. And by God, right there, by the little kiddie pool, was a big pig, girl pig. Her job at the cafe was to eat the leftovers off the plates, and she took her job seriously. Big girl. And he says, well, what is your name, Missy? And she says, my name's Lola B. And he said, well, you can call me Sugar, and I'll call you Puddin'. Because there was literally pudding everywhere, hanging all over her, all over Carl, all over the crowd, and everybody, yay! Lola B was not amused. Lola B says, my name ain't Puddin'. And she went and got a stick, those little switchy sticks, and she started it on Carl's butt, just and the whole crowd went, oh, Carl. And Lola B says, you do not call me Puddin'. And the whole crowd was just going crazy, concerned about Carl, of course. And Carl wasn't being quiet either. Like, oh, no. Pretty soon, both Carl and Lola noticed that the crowd got quiet. And there was smoke coming off of Carl's little butt, getting pretty warm. And the reason the crowd had got so quiet is not only was there smoke coming off of his butt, but the lovely smell of baked ham. It was so hot. Well, Lola B knew in a second what was about to happen because they hadn't ordered their entrees yet. And Lola B said, oh, no. No. And she put her head down and ran under Carl and threw Carl on her back and went through that crowd. They parted like the Red Sea and off they went up the country road. Well, they got all the way back to the farm that Carl had come from. And he introduced Lola B to his mama. And then he went out and introduced Lola B to all the ones in the barnyard that had made fun of him. She's a big girl. You didn't mess with Lola B. And they said, "Well, nice to meet you, Lola B. Don't whoop us." And she says, "My name ain't Lola B. And that is Cannonball Carl. He's world famous. But I call him Sugar." And Cannonball Carl looked at her and she said, "You can call me Puddin' anytime." And that is the story of Sugar Puddin'. It's probably true. I'm Kevin Hayes, the story man. Hope this made you smile.